Welcome back everyone, the World Cup is well and truly underway. We just had the most interesting day of football, at least in my opinion so far. I was posted up that entire day, like Rudiger right here, watching the football unfolding in front of my eyes because we saw several great results, great games. I've got 4 games for you today. We'll first talk about Germany 7-1 Curaçao, a bad memory for all the Brazilians, a decent memory for the Curaçao people, actually. I don't think they'll be too disappointed with what happened despite the scoreline. And also, I will say, I don't think Germany convinced me all that much in spite of the scoreline. A phenomenal second half of football between the Netherlands and Japan. A 5-1 trouncing, Sweden putting down on Tunisia after a horrible World Cup qualifying campaign, which they had to get bailed out by the playoffs. And then finally, Ivory Coast 1-0 Ecuador, a fantastic game start to finish despite being 0-0 for most of the time. And we'll also talk about this Yan Diomande show. Phenomenal player, Yan Diomande. I've spoken about him at length. He's finally showing himself to the world at this World Cup, as have many players. But before we get onto that, we'll first start with Germany. And obviously what I mentioned was this extremely narrow shape they're going to play with. No player really capable of holding width. Leroy Sané, somewhat, but we've seen the form he's been in. The injury of Lennart Karl is so painful for Germany. And if you look here, a couple of players to point out. Number 18 is Nathaniel Brown, who looks like he's going to Bayern. I'm extremely excited about that. Super tight. Not a fullback that necessarily runs the channels. He does like drifting inwards. Something we see a lot from Nuno Mendes as well. You also see 23, 7 and 17. This super congested midfield, which often parks right outside the box or just inside of it. Of Felix Nmecha, number 23. Number 7, Kai Havertz, who drops deep from that attacker position. And number 17, Florian Wirtz. Number 10, Jamal Musiala, sitting slightly higher, oftentimes being that focal point in the box, because when he does receive the ball, he is the most pressure-resistant player. It is impossible to take the ball off of him. But if we look how that presents itself on the pitch, we can see extremely narrow. Nathaniel Brown there, very far on the inside. You can see him right here. Joshua Kimmich as well, number 6, right at the bottom. Not as wide as you would expect a right back to be. And then Germany relying on one of Nmecha or Pavlovic to drop deep and pick up the ball. And then as we see, when they do go forward, again, it's not much playmaking through the wings. It's playmaking from the inside and making exceptionally small spaces between all of the attackers. When you look at here, just how close all of the players are together, you've got Nmecha picking up the ball from deep and then drilling the ball forward. And again, it's either going to be Nmecha or Pavlovic picking it up slightly more advanced and then hoping to play, fast, quick movement combination play between Nathaniel Brown, Joshua Kimmich, Kai Havertz, Musiala, Florian Wirtz. Very small spaces, very fast combination, and this is why I'm a bit concerned about Germany, because this requires the players to be playing exceptionally well. Those passes from deep need to be very good. Those drilled passes from Nmecha or Pavlovic need to be very good. The player that receives needs to be very good. Then the players slightly forward, Musiala, Wirtz, Havertz, good movement. They need to separate from their marker. They need to pick up the ball. They need to immediately move it on. And we saw in that first half, Germany not doing that very well, which is why they struggled so much. That was part of it. The second part was the defense. There was a bit of shakiness. First of all, getting broken down a bit too easily with some balls in behind. You can see a lack of pace in this German back line. Nathaniel Brown, yes, he's a bit quicker, but he's also playing very advanced. Otherwise, the centre-back pairing of Jonathan Tah and Nico Schlotterbeck, not terribly quick. And Joshua Kimmich as well, not very quick. And also famously does struggle sometimes in those 1v1 challenges. We remember him against Vinicius Jr. back in the Champions League when he had to fill in that right back under Thomas Tuchel. Vinicius Jr. ate him up. And against these dangerous left wingers at this World Cup, we could see Germany look a bit weak out there. Yan Diomande is obviously licking his lips, but we'll get onto this Ivory Coast team. They have dangers everywhere. But here we see Jonathan Tah make an uncharacteristic mistake. At Bayern this season, he's been very good in build-up, but here he picks up the ball and just loses it. And this was not the only time he's done so. This was not the only time Germany looked weak defensively. Here we can see Nico Schlotterbeck make a pretty weak tackle on a ball in behind. This led to Curaçao's goal. The ball bounces free, and after a while, they score from a deflected shot. And again, here, something you would expect Jonathan Tah to convert any day of the week. This huge fridge of a man picks up the ball, he's shielding it, and yet the Curaçao player manages to get around him and actually slip away with the ball. Jonathan Tah's calling for the ball to be out, but it doesn't matter. In that sort of situation, he cannot falter. But moving on to the good. Germany did have, in the first half, moments of quality where that very narrow shape did work. Those small spaces did work. Germany combined very well. Notably, I think Florian Wirtz throughout looked very good. Here we can see a brilliant assist to Felix Nemecha, where he does pass the ball 1-2, lay it off right in front of Nemecha, who curls it into the back post. Nemecha, who had a very good game. It's insane that Julian Nagelsmann considered only starting one of Pavlovic or Nemecha at this World Cup. Up until perhaps a month ago, the plan was to have Leon Goretzka start there, and we saw Leon Goretzka come on against tired legs and look disastrous. It's a miracle that we are not seeing Goretzka starting. Nemecha and Pavlovic, one of the best midfield duos at this World Cup. With Goretzka in there, Germany would have been finished. Genuinely, really poor. And the good moments continued. Germany, in spite of not looking super inspiring in that first half, they do manage to score a second goal off of a very, very good header by Nico Schlotterbeck. Who is often very threatening in the air for Dortmund. Hasn't necessarily shown it as much for Germany, but here, very well converted header. This wasn't his only headed chance as well. Germany were aiming for him quite a bit on these corners. Perhaps a bit weird to some to see him being aimed at and not the monstrous Jonathan Tah, but his movement inside the box on these headers, his conversion once he does get his head onto it, is very good. So Schlotterbeck, a very, very strong target here nonetheless. And again, when we talk about quality, obviously, quality Germany, you think of Jamal Musiala, and we did see improvements from him. Again, regardless of the opposition with Jamal Musiala, it's always about confidence. With confidence, doesn't matter if it's Curaçao or if it's prime Real Madrid, prime Barcelona, he will dribble. Without the confidence, he will look bad against Curaçao. And Germany, Musiala did look good. He did look confident. He looked sharp. You can see some of this confidence missing. Here he picks up the ball in a situation where most players wouldn't necessarily dribble. He's very face on the player, doesn't have much of an angle to start dribbling. He just glides past him. And in this position where he does get past him, I would have just liked Musiala to go hunting for the shot. He instead passes it to Havertz. Not the greatest run from Havertz, not the greatest pass from Musiala, but in general, the confidence is there. And speaking of Havertz, a very good game from him. I thought his build-up play was very good. He came in deep, lots of quality there. I have said that in this system that they're playing, he needs to start ahead of Undav simply because his quality on the ball in hold-up play is phenomenal. And also a great penalty taker. Sends the keeper the wrong way. Very calm penalty. Passed into the bottom left. No complaints there. And this just continued being very good for Germany. In that second half, they actually looked sharp. And we saw the dangers of that narrow system. First of all, Jamal Musiala receives the ball, has the confidence to finally shoot, and I hope he continues because Musiala needs to shoot. He gets into those positions, and he just needs to start converting. Here, a very good shot, regardless of the goalkeeper potentially being able to do a bit better. A very strong shot drilled right into the bottom left corner. And again, this was a match. At this point, Germany started having fun. Here, ball passed into Dennis Undav. Heel flicks the ball over the defender. Nene Brown smashes it in off the post. Phenomenal finish. Dennis Undav again, cut back from Joshua Kimmich, scores into an empty net essentially. And then finally, cherry on top of the cake, Kai Havertz makes a run in behind the defense and chips the goalkeeper. Beautiful finish and a 7-1. Now, 7 goals. 14 opportunities for a goal or assist. There is one man who did not pick up a single one of those. Leroy Sané. That injury to Leonard Carl will be so sorely regretted by Germany because he was coming into it with so much more quality than Leroy Sané. Sané simply did not perform. Ever since that move from City to Bayern, he's continued underperforming for Germany. for Bayern. And unfortunately, we saw that missing. And what can you do at this point? There is no good alternative. You've got Jamie Leveling. Fine, he can try to do a job. I still think Zana is probably better. Maxi Baya can try to fill in, but again, not the same profile. I think Baya will come on more against tired legs. Generally, the one big downside in this fixture, Leroy Sané simply didn't look good. He did not perform the simple jobs that were asked of him. He did not finish well. He did not pass very well. Generally, a very poor performance. And so in spite of this 7-1, I'm not yet awfully convinced. But thankfully, Germany, and I will say thankfully, I think at this point, they obviously didn't stumble against Curaçao, which means they leave the group. If you look at the bracket as well, first, second, third in this group doesn't make a huge difference. The draw is pretty unforgiving for this group that they're in. But Germany do have two big tests, which will be against Ivory Coast and Ecuador, who both look like very strong teams. But before we move on to that, we'll quickly touch on the Netherlands and Japan. Netherlands, who many people criticize me for not putting in my top 7 favorites at this World Cup. But very simply, I just think they missed the quality. You look at this lineup, you consider the fact that they have a very poor manager by the standards of top teams. And looking at them, it just feels like a worse Portugal, again, poor manager, poor attack. The Dutch have a similarly bad attack. They finally dropped Memphis Depay, who's been underperforming for a while, but still not looked great. Daniel Malen has been very good for the Netherlands. Cody Gakpo is good for the Netherlands. Somerville, I thought, had a very good game, but still just overall, this Dutch impetus isn't there. They don't come in and deliver all that much. And against Japan yesterday, we saw a quiet first half where, again, you would expect the Dutch to be a bit more offensive, a bit better, especially considering this long lineage of attacking heritage that Netherlands has. Johan Cruyff, Van Basten, Van Nistelrooy, and now they're left with this. But again, the goal came from the defender. Van Dijk, you can always rely on him. He has a phenomenal goal-scoring record for Liverpool and the Netherlands, and here we saw a very good cross and a brilliant header. He shrugs off, just pushes off that Japanese defender very easily. This Japanese team, which isn't terribly physical, and yet managed to score a header against the Netherlands. We'll get onto that in a moment. And at this point, you expect the Netherlands to try and take control, but they never did. They never did, and they let Japan come back into it. I will say, Verbruggen, I was surprised. Not a very good performance from him on either goal. They were deflected, not terribly easy saves, but nonetheless, I would have expected better efforts from him. And it's, again, another part of this Dutch team which looks better on paper than it does on the pitch. Someone who did look better on the pitch, Somerville, very good goal. And the point of Somerville is very pertinent because he was taken off after that. The Dutch went 2-1 up, and they really should have just tried to convert a bit more, to play a bit better. And instead, they took off their best attacking player and tried to sit back a bit, absorb pressure, and they did not cope with the pressure very well. Japan were forming attack after attack after attack, and in the last minute, off a corner, cross gets whipped in, headed by one of the Japanese players, deflects off of the other Japanese player's head and goes in. Again, I just mentioned Van Dijk bullied his player. You look even in this picture, the Japanese players aren't huge in stature. You cannot allow them to score from a set piece. You cannot allow them as well, considering the players that the Dutch have, to play better than them in overall play at any point of the game. And yet they allowed this. And very simply, the quality isn't as high as some of the other contenders. This quality is even lower on the pitch. Very simply why I don't see the Netherlands being a top contender for this tournament. And all of a sudden as well, they've got to start worrying about this first place because they've shared the points with Japan. Japan, who looked very good, I will say, who will be eyeing up first place. But the other country eyeing up that first place is Sweden. Sweden, who looked so disastrous under a Danish manager in World Cup qualifying, now under the tutelage of Graham Potter, turned around, looked very good, smashed Tunisia 5-1. A statement performance for a team who obviously looked awful throughout all of qualifying. And many people also pointed to this game against Poland. If you did watch this game, Poland dominated throughout. Sweden did not have much of the ball. Sweden pretty much had 3 chances, scored 3 goals, and many people said it's not the most convincing performance. But I will say, I liked what I saw from Sweden. Obviously, not the fact that they won. I'm Polish. No World Cup for us. Great. But Poland playing better, Poland having a lot of the ball. Sweden still managed to restrict those very last final third chances. Poland didn't create all that much despite all the control they had, for one. For two, Sweden were very good at creating chances from very little. Again, very positive. And third one, I think it takes good mental fortitude to look worse for most of the game and still come out with the win. And if we do talk about a dominant performance against a worse team, Sweden also showed that in that same World Cup qualifying playoff run when they beat Ukraine 3-1, a hat-trick from Viktor Gyökeres. And many people also questioned, how does Viktor Gyökeres work with the return of Alexander Isak? Is Alexander Isak even going to look good after this awful injury with Liverpool? And the answer was yes. This front two worked extremely well, in part because Gyökeres honestly doesn't work that well as a lone striker. I've said this before. In my head, he's not a main target man. He doesn't like receiving the ball with his back to goal. He prefers receiving the ball often slightly deeper or in behind, where he doesn't necessarily need all that much quality on the first touch, where he can settle himself in possession and then start picking it up. And we saw Gyökeres drift into those left positions, which he does like, which we've seen him tend to a bit at Arsenal, a lot at Sporting, picking up the ball from deep, running at the defender, which he's very good at, and creating a lot of chances from it. It was from a Viktor Gyökeres pickup where the ball bounced away, bounced to Ivory, who managed to score a very good goal from outside the box to open the scoring. We then saw Isak pick up the ball from Gyökeres, sending him in behind. Good finish, good hit. I will say the goalkeeper could have done a lot better. He got his hands to it. It slipped through his hands, but nonetheless, a good shot to be putting in from that position, from the sort of body position he was at. It was good to turn and convert into power there. And Tunisia still had a bit of life in them in that first half. They managed to score from a header, a lot of set pieces at this World Cup. Are we watching the Premier League? But after that, it was pretty much all Sweden. We see Gyökeres get slipped in behind by Isak after one of the Tunisian defenders loses the ball. Very good finish. We see a slightly sloppier finish here off of a loose ball into the box. But again, 4-1 to Sweden. They're pouncing on their chances. And then finally, Ayari once more outside the box. Very good finish. And Sweden do look very good. I will say Tunisia did not impress, but generally a 5-1 win is always a good sign. Sweden turning it around after a disastrous World Cup qualifying, a much better qualifying playoff, and now they have arrived at this tournament, and they're going to ask, can we secure that first place? Can we secure that second place? I think many people were predicting them to finish third, behind Japan as well. So Sweden are looking at these people and will be looking to prove them wrong. And finally, moving on to the last game, Ivory Coast, Ecuador, a fantastic game. It was 0-0 most of the way through, but many chances, and we need to talk about Yan Diomande. I've talked about him for so long, many people saying this is just the Bundesliga tax, but if you look at the positions he picks up the ball in, you look at how he creates, you know, no tax can be applied to it. Obviously, the Premier League is tougher and it will take some adaptation, and he won't have it as easy as the Bundesliga, but he's simply phenomenal. On a technical level, on a physical level as well, the amount of speed he can generate from just a pure standstill. Just stood there, no momentum, no acceleration, kicks the ball and just gets to 100% speed so quickly. Something you see from Jeremy Doku, something you saw from Kingsley Coman. Both players who, in spite of sometimes worse form, sometimes worse decision making, simply because they can accelerate the ball so quickly, they'll always create. They'll always be dangerous because of those incredible physical attributes. And Yan Diomande has that. His top speed is exceptional as well. His strength on the ball is exceptional as well. We watched some of the chances he created, and he looked phenomenal. Here, this quick 1-2 touch to send the ball in behind, very good. And not only did he create off the right, he created off the left. He picks up in positions like this. zigzags through the box. Again, his final product was not great. Here in this situation, he sent the ball over the bar, but at some point it doesn't matter. Even without end product, this guy is so dangerous. And he did have some good end product, some good passing, sharing with his team. Very unselfish throughout the game, I thought, as well. And this game, in spite of some bad finishing, including from Yan Diomande, was exceptional to watch. So many chances. Ecuador missing early on, ball flies over the bar. Moments later, Ivory Coast, a good chance as well. Hit from a layoff from the edge of the box. Ball flies just past the post. Here from that 1-2 pass from Yan Diomande, the ball gets smacked at the goalkeeper. And again, Ecuador, huge shot from just the edge of the box, slams off the bar. But finally, we did see them score right at the end. Amad Diallo converts. Amad Diallo, who didn't even start this game. And it's worth saying there's so much attacking talent in this Ivory Coast team. The defense, perhaps not so settled. A couple of mistakes here and there. I thought Singo looked good. Doué on the ball a bit better than off of it. But the attack is the highlight. You have Diomande, but then you also have Nicolas Pepe, you have Eliwahi, you have Bazuana Toure. The player who scored, Diallo, he didn't even start. He came off the bench. This is how much talent they have. And they look at some of this mistake making from Germany. They look at Ta being a bit more sluggish. They look at Schlotterbeck not being that quick. They look at Kimmich struggling in one-on-ones. They are licking their lips. This Group E is going to be a phenomenal watch because 1, 2, 3, you cannot predict them right now. Anyone could finish anywhere. Curaçao will unfortunately be last. I doubt they can make it out of the group. They will need a miracle win against Ecuador or Ivory Coast if they do want to make it out, but it's unlikely to happen. It's going to be a big battle between Germany, Ivory Coast, and Ecuador. It's going to be extremely fun to watch, and I will obviously cover all of it. And I hope you join me here again. Throughout this World Cup, I will be putting out much content. Not just these match analyses, I will be putting out a bit more content as well, centered around certain players, predictions, previews as well for some of the bigger games, for the knockout stages especially. So 100% stay tuned. In any case, thanks for watching and see you later.